Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the Gender Speaker Live show this wonderful Saturday afternoon. Nobody here at the moment, but I'm sure we'll catch up. You'll catch up on the replay. So just a reminder at the beginning, I'm going to mention it later on. I'm doing some transgender awareness courses looking at transgender non-binary inclusion within the workplace. That's on Wednesday. Wednesday at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and on Thursday at 2, or it might be the other way around, actually. Just get those right. Anyway, if you look down in the comments on Facebook, and also it'll be on YouTube, you'll find a link that'll take you directly to the Eventbrite page. It's donation basis, so you pay what you feel you can afford. There's no limit on that. There's a recommended one, but you pay what you can afford. It's an hour and a half with about another half an hour at the end for questions, and I'll deal with any questions people have. So that's coming up on Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday or Thursday, you take a choice of which suits you best. So today, talking about growing up trans and what it's like growing up as somebody who is trans. And I think I wanted to start just with talking a little bit about my own story. When I was 6, this is me, 6 years old, my parents took me to see a child psychiatrist. It wasn't actually their idea. The school had suggested it because they found that I didn't seem to be getting on very well with kids of my own age. So I went to the psychiatrist who assessed me, and he came to the conclusion that I was a couple of years ahead of my age mentally, and that perhaps the best thing to do would be to put me up a year in the class, which is what they did. And I got on famously. Everything seemed to work a lot better until I moved to another county where age was the critical factor. I was then put down a year. So that was the start of my long time battle with education. But then something else happened. It had been about a year since the psychiatrist, and at this new school, and there was a young kid in the class about the same age as me, but he was part of a really big family. He was like in the middle of 11 kids. And the problem with being in a not particularly well-off family of 11 kids is that you get a lot of hand-me-down clothes, which would have been fine if it wasn't for the fact that most of his older siblings were sisters. So he'd come to school one day wearing a pair of his sister's knickers. I think he'd forgotten it was cross-country running that day, and we all had to get in and get changed to go cross-country running. One of the other boys spotted what he was wearing and started jeering and laughing, and literally like a scene out of Lord of the Flies, all the boys pitched in, jeering and shouting and making fun of him. I stood there watching him in absolute fear and thinking, it was like, on the one hand, there was, oh my God, he gets to wear girls' knickers. On the other hand, I was terrified. See, I'd already started beginning to cross-dress. I'd got this sense that something wasn't right. This whole thing about the psychiatrist, they'd assessed this sense that I was 2 years ahead of my age mentally. But if you look at girls compared to boys at schools, what you find is that at that age, girls are about 2 years ahead of boys mentally. If they'd actually looked at the way that I lived, if they'd looked at the comics I read, if they looked at the kind of lifestyle I had, it wasn't overtly obvious. I lived in a time, this was in the 1950s, this was a time when homosexuality was illegal. Any boy who in any way expressed some degree of femininity was immediately ridiculed, just as that friend of mine at school had been. I was so terrified. I didn't even step in to help him because I knew if I did, they would just turn on me. But I really did know one important thing: no one could ever know. That was a secret I kept until I was in my early 20s when I finally told someone. But I was 50 before I actually finally had the courage to come out and say to the world, yeah, this is who I am. And I think this is one of the things that people don't understand about being trans. We live with fear. From the moment you realize that actually there's something different about you, something that doesn't quite work. And it's to say I thought it would be different for girls who wanted to be boys. But no, they live with the same level of fear, the same amount of bullying, discrimination, harassment goes on at schools. The parents aren't very happy because parents want their little girls to be in the ponytails and pigtails and be really cute. And all they want to do is wear jeans, play football. Whereas I would have loved to have been doing the sort of ponytails and pigtails, but there was no way. It was short back and sides. Boys are assessed by what we do. Girls are assessed by how they look, and that's a real challenge. I remember once, it's the late 80s. I was walking down King's Road in Chelsea. It was a really hot summer's day, and there was a woman walking down the street. She came, literally. I was walking very slowly because I was quite early for a meeting I was going to, and I was just wandering around looking in some of the shops that were going down. And she walked past me, and she had an orange suntan, but that wasn't what made her stand out. The fact was she also was wearing a figure-hugging orange woolen dress. That as she walked past me, I felt this strange feeling. I thought, what the hell's going on? I looked at her, and I suddenly realized every single man in the cars, in the buses, up in the offices, everyone was focused and all attention was on this girl. And she obviously enjoyed it because she had a big smile on her face. I was quite shocked by the feel and the sense of what that was. And I realized that, men don't understand that women dress up and walk along and that's it. They get attention. It really, really struck me. A few years later, I was in Dublin. By this time, I'd come out and I was big. I could scrub up quite well. And I was walking from my hotel to one of the big gay pubs in Dublin. And I suddenly felt that same strange feeling. And there was a few car horns beeping. And I was dressed pretty sexy at the time. And as I was walking down the street, realized I was exactly the same. I was getting all that attention. Everybody was looking at me. The car horns beeping were actually beeping at me. And men don't understand that. That's part of the differences between the way in which men grow up and the way women grow up. Men don't have to live with the fact that they're constantly being looked at and the fear that goes with that. Walking down the street late at night, as a man, I don't think twice about doing that. I used to hitchhike at 10:30, 11:30 at night, but suddenly, as I transitioned, I found dressed up, looking quite good, walking down the street, and suddenly at 11 o'clock at night, that's not a safe place for a woman alone. People would spill out of bars half drunk, coming up and grabbing me, "Hello, darling, can I take you home?" And that's quite scary because if they then discovered if I spoke and they heard my voice, I would immediately start to be facing the problem they were going to potentially hit me. And, it never actually happened, but I've been a bit close from time to time. So growing up transgender, we have to live with that fear all the time. What happens if somebody finds out? What's going to go on? Now, the strange thing that's going on at the moment is this pressure that says, children are not, they may not be trans, they may be gay. Now, when I was a kid, you didn't want to be gay, definitely either. People would definitely pull away from that and say, let's try and do something to make them straight. Now, what we're saying is, let's not treat a trans person. Let's not take them to a clinic. Let's not give them hormone blockers. Let's just let things go, and then maybe it'll just turn out to be gay, and that'll be okay. A lot better than being transgender. But the reality is that that's not the truth. When I was running a support service in Hull for quite a while, we had quite a few trans boys and trans girls coming to us in their teens trying to look for help. And I remember one saying to us, a young trans girl, saying, "Actually, I'm going to have to go back to being gay." And I said, "Why?" He said, "I can't get a boyfriend." And this is a challenge for a young trans woman. Straight guys aren't interested because, underneath the clothes, no matter how good she looks, she's still got a male body. And they don't want to be with someone with a male body. They want someone with a female body. And the gay guys, they don't want to be with a woman. They want somebody who's a gay. So you'll notice that in the gay community, a lot of young trans boys particularly are very, very feminine in the way that they look. Just as in the lesbian community, a lot of the girls are very, very masculine in the way they look. But they identify as lesbian or gay because that gives them a community, a culture, somewhere that they can feel safe. For trans people, we have a tendency not to get part of either culture. The straight culture doesn't like us. The gay culture doesn't like us, or finds it difficult to have relationships with people like that. A lot of trans people you find end up in relationships with other trans people, trans men with trans women, trans women together, trans men together, because we understand the challenge and the problems that are going on. Now, I'm going a little bit longer today than I did yesterday because I want to talk a little bit about the Tavistock Clinic and the Mermaids Charity, because it's been getting in the news a lot. Because if someone's growing up trans, what are the parents going to do? There are only two places to get help at the moment. One is the Tavistock Clinic. They have clinics in different parts of the country, but it's an NHS clinic, a gender identity service for children. Now, what hit the news some time ago was that all of a sudden the Tavistock Clinic's rate of referrals massively increased. In 2009, there were like 70 referrals, just over one a week. By the time we got to 2018, nearly 10 years later, and it's running at 2,500 a year. And people say, it's a 4, 5, 6,000% increase. Well, this is how to lie with statistics. What people don't understand is that up until 2012, you couldn't get any help at the gender clinic. If you were under 18, no treatment would be given. No hormone blockers, no hormones, no surgery, nothing. You couldn't get anything until you were 18. So what they were offering was support in the way of counselling, support in the way of helping people come to terms with what was going on, but nothing to help them deal with it in terms of medical treatment. Now, that probably was okay for quite a lot of kids. It still is. Not everybody wants to have surgery. In fact, most trans people don't have surgery. A lot of the reason why they don't have surgery is because having got through puberty, having got to the point where the body is now developing secondary characteristics. For boys, the voice has dropped, the Adam's apple has got bigger, the hands have got bigger, they've suddenly put on a growth spurt and they're now topping 6 foot and they've big feet. All of a sudden, the idea of being able to pass as a woman is gone. And so for people like me, I grew up when there was nothing you could do about it. So I just had to hide it and hope. As it happened, I didn't end up to be quite so big, and I did end up being able to pass moderately well walking down the street. Now I don't really care. Now I am who I am, and I'm intending to now identify more as non-binary than as female. But still, legally, you have to choose one. You have to be male or female. Your passport has to say male or female. There's no other options. And if that's a choice, I choose female. But can you see this difficulty and conflict that people are having? We've got a binary system that says you've got to fit into one or the other. Doesn't matter what your body is. If your body isn't quite male or female, well, we'll fix it until it is. And that's been the method in the past. If you grow up feeling that you ought to be a girl, if you start to dress as a girl, you're going to get punished. We enforce those gender rules within society far more fiercely than we enforce rules about burglary, rules about even killing. And we will hide the fact that we know someone has done something illegal, but oh my God, if they dress the wrong way, we can get a huge amount of pressure, huge amount of discrimination, bullying, and often quite violent. So, that enormous increase in referrals happened because in 2012, somebody took over the Tavistock Clinic and they then started to give treatment for hormone blockers. That's to say, when a child reaches the age of puberty, if they can get an appointment at the moment, if after a series of, and a quite long series of counselling and consultation, if they felt this child was definitely transgender and that it would be in their best interests to help them actually have some more time to make that decision, then they can be put on puberty blockers so that by the age of 14 when they've got, if they've stuck with it for that number of years, and it's fairly clear they absolutely want to live in this new gender, have surgery and go through and transition, then they won't have to deal with all those secondary characteristics. They'll be able to transition, they'll have surgery, and frankly, no one would tell. They'd walk down the street, you would never know. I know quite a few trans people who've had the benefit of hormone blockers, and they're just men and women. That's it. That's how they look. How would anybody know? I know a lot of people who've transitioned, and that's the case. I also know an awful lot who were able to get blockers, who developed very strong secondary characteristics, and it's really hard for them to pass. So that's one of the big reasons why this huge increase was suddenly treatment was being made available. And once treatment was made available, the word got out, and we've had this big growth. Let's just think about this: 2,500 kids in the space of a couple of years. There are 12.5 million children in this country at that age. This is a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of the numbers of children. Most schools will not have somebody who is identifying openly as trans because there just aren't that number around. There's been a big increase on girls transitioning. I'll look at that at another time because it's interesting to see that shift and that change. I think a lot of boys are encouraged to be gay because that seems to be more acceptable. A lot of girls are encouraged to be lesbian. So we'll come back to that again. Anyway, for now, that's my musings for today. Just thinking about growing up trans. It's not easy is the message I want to try and get across. If you've got somebody who's trying to live and come out and trying to work through this sense of in their head that they've got the wrong body, that they should have been born a boy but they're a girl, they should have been born a girl but they're a boy, and they're having to try and cope with that, it's a lot of fear, it's a lot of anguish. Sadly, it's too much for quite a few, and they decide to take their lives. So much of what we're trying to do in raising awareness and help is just to help people be accepted. Because the one thing that we all want is just to be accepted for who we are. Don't want to go to work and just be one of the other women at work. For a lot of people, that's it. Increasing numbers of us, and I saying, actually, I want to be in the middle. I'm going to be a little bit different. But I'm going to look at that in a little bit more depth. So I shall be back tomorrow, but for now, just let me remind you, transgender, non-binary and inclusion workshop, Wednesday or Thursday. It's about an hour and a half with a half hour of questions. Any questions you want to ask will be there. Please do come and join me again tomorrow when I'll be talking about more gender issues. But for now, let me leave you with that thought, and I was going to try and put that on. All right, let's get my put that back on there. If you look down in the comments down below on Facebook, if you watch it on Facebook, you'll see a link to the Eventbrite page. Please do come and join me, and I hope you have a good day. See you tomorrow. Let's find my way out with my video, and we'll go. Take care. See you tomorrow.